Hello everybody, welcome to Percussion Axiom TV. I am your host Tom Barrett and this is episode number 90. We continue today with our series of Behind the Ewazen in my preparation for just 4 or 5 days away now, my performance with the Austin Civic Orchestra of the first movement of the Eric Ewazen Marimba Concerto. In episode 1 we focused mostly around the idea, or axiom if you will, wondering and sort of asking the question, does an audience member want a more behind-the-scenes look at what the performer has to do in preparation and all those aspects that goes into getting ready for such a concert and appearance. And I have to say I'm really impressed. Thank you guys so much for all of your comments, both at YouTube and Drum Chatter. I hope I was able to get back to most of you about that. I really appreciate it, though. I believe I read all of them. And I really want to thank you guys for leaving so many great comments. And so, you can go back and check those out, of course, and read sort of what everyone's thinking and discussing about. So we're going to continue with that today in episode number 90 and look at some more technical aspects. Stay tuned for episode 3 in this series, which will hopefully appear at Drum Chatter on Thursday afternoon, where we'll talk more about some larger scope issues, style and structure of a piece, and kind of what we're doing from maybe even from a interpretive standpoint. So stay tuned for that. But today we're going to talk about 3 very important, what I see as a performer, very important, more technical or mechanical issues of performing this piece. And I hope both the percussionist and the audience member can gain something from this and a look inside in preparation for my concert Saturday night. Okay, so if you're familiar with Eric's music, probably best described as being heavily influenced by tonality. So really what we mean when we say tonality is the very sort of common system of consonance versus dissonance. Obviously consonants being fifths and thirds maybe, dissonance being the minor second, intervals that maybe don't sound technically consonant or good together. And inside that system there are a lot of commonalities that we find in tonal music, and what we might call a progression. So in the beginning of this piece is basically in C major. In C major we can expect a lot of 4 chords. So 4 up from C would be F, F chord, and the 5 chords. And then back to 1. And those of you who don't follow music or are musicians even, it's a very common, very, very common progression in tonal music, but also in rock music and pop music. So we can predict then in this key that we'll have lots of chords within those 3 key levels or points on the keyboard. And we certainly do. One thing that changes Eric's music a little bit is he'll throw in a major chord in a key that you might not expect. And we see that in the very opening piece, or the very opening movement, music in the first movement here, after the first opening chorale that we discussed in episode 1. So in preparation for the very beginning passage here in the Allegro section, the first thing we'll do is block out the progression. And by progression I mean a series of chords that he works us through, starting in C major. And so we get C major, then we get a G major chord in what we call first inversion, then we get a 4 chord, and then back to 1 chord. So that's the progression. Just like I stated here in the beginning, we have 1, 4, 5, 1. Or actually 1, 5, 4, 1 in that voicing. So voicing basically just determines sort of what order the pitches go and how they move from one to the other. So that might be kind of an inside baseball look at this, but this process is really important for the performer as he or she memorizes a piece of music. Rather than thinking about too many events, we can just think about progressions and the predictability in the tonal system of those progressions. So this is how we practice that in a blocking form. Now here's a typical, going on to the next chord, typical Ewazenism, if you will. We get an E flat chord, seemingly out of nowhere, and then we get back to C major, and back to G major, and back to 1. So the whole progression in the actual piece, arpeggiated now, and arpeggiated is just a term basically saying instead of striking the chords, you're going to play them in succession in a pattern. In this case, 4, 3, 2, 1 sounds something like this. So that's the opening allegro, first thing the performer plays. And so what I'm thinking about as I'm learning that are all those things. Progression, the likelihood of going from this chord to that chord. I block it and then I go ahead and put the actual written notes in there. In this case, the sticking permutation or order 4, 3, 2, 1. In marimba land, we call 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, as far as delineating which stick is which. Okay, not long after that, we get another statement of the same theme in minor, this time in D minor. So if we already know the first one in major, then we can pretty much predict what's going to happen here in D minor. And sure enough, we get the same thing. D minor to 5, 6 chord, first inversion. Then G minor, 4, it's in minor because it's in a minor key, back to 1. And so on. So that's... So there's that. Exactly the same thing, basically up a step from C to D. So learning this and understanding how all that works, this is what we call music theory, can really help us kind of learn a piece more effectively and more quickly. And that's always a good thing. So there's the first aspect. Understanding a composer's sort of compositional, I guess, language, if you will, using that to help us understand the piece better and to learn it faster. The second thing we need to deal with this piece, you'll notice as you watch it being played, is the demands physically of our body as we have to go from extreme register of the instrument to extreme register of the instrument. So not long after the beginning material, we have this music here. Let's see. Something along these lines here. So that music there obviously requires us to move very quickly left and right. To help do that more effectively, I try to move as less as possible, shifting my weight this way and this way. That's the first thing, and then also by staying as low as possible. This music is also much faster than that, of course. And so on. It actually goes faster than that, so I have some work to do more there. So that's the second aspect of this. You know, it's a unique instrument where we have to move so much. You know, what instrument do you know that you have to stand behind to play, let alone cover almost 8 feet worth of space? So the secrets there are limiting your body movement, keeping more centered in the instrument, and keeping your sticks as low as possible. That's the second aspect. The third aspect has to do with sticking. Okay, and what I mean by that is essentially which one of these 4 are we going to use and when? All right, and so there's several passages. The ones I've played for you all up to this point have been primarily chordal or arpeggiated. There are some scalier passages in here, and I know we're getting behind the inside baseball here, but scalier passages are simple runs across the instrument, one note followed by another. And this is where you'll see a lot of variation among players as how they attack these particular passages. For me, it's really about finding the way the keyboard lays, the way the notes lie on the keyboard, I should say. And I use a lot of small interval playing. One of the benefits of the Stevens style of playing, which is the name of this grip, and actually the name of the individual who invented this grip, one of the advantages of it is the strength of small intervals. So small intervals being just the space between this D sharp here and the C sharp. So in one run, about halfway through the movement, lays on the keyboard with 2 up here with a B flat, A flat, then F, E, D, and then that pattern continues down the instrument. So it makes sense to me, if you're strong with small interval playing, to play a sticking 4-3 and then alternating left, right, left. So the whole thing would sound something like this. So that's the first thing. Another spot where another way we could apply that idea is just the next section of music after that features these 5 notes. And so to play that, I'm playing tight intervals on the lower manual, which is the white keyboard here in a piano, and then alternating here. Same sticking, and works pretty well from just ease of playing. There's lots of options of playing that. I could alternate, which is to me a lot more awkward and requires moving this way. This way I can keep one hand up here on these notes here and one hand down here. So again, and so on. That's an interesting one because it goes all the way down to the bottom and all the way to the top. So you'll notice that my body, like in the second section of the show here, second point of the show we talked about, is trying to move as little as possible. Okay, one more concept behind baseball, or inside baseball, sorry. Concept for today is the push and the pull. I've talked about this in previous shows if you've been watching. But one of the things I'll do is push into, there's a passage later. Maybe it's hard to see in the camera, but I'm going from A to F sharp, which is a little bit of an awkward movement. But I'll go ahead and use a small interval stroke, push into the F sharp. These are just D major arpeggiations to an E major. And I'll pull away from this shift from the E flat to the C. So that's the push. We push into the E flat, push away from the F sharp. That allows us to not have to do the chicken dance, which is getting our elbows up and down. So that's a look at, I'll play that whole passage for you here just so you can see it in action. So you can see how that hopefully helps us to really move less, keep our elbows in, keep the phrase going in the right direction, meaning the flowingness of the phrase. Behind that are some beautiful string long notes. So as percussive as that is, we want to sort of try to generate the effect of nice fluid movement into the music. All right, to execute that, if you're a marimba player, you understand the strength involved in being able to control the small interval with this particular technique of holding the sticks, and also the strength involved of pushing and striking the mallet and the bars in precisely the right place. Okay, we got pretty detailed there in that episode, so I hope if you're an audience member watching this that you find some interest, and maybe you'll look at the performance a little bit differently, understand the massiveness of this monster instrument that we're playing. And if you're a player, I hope that this gives you maybe a few ideas to think about. So the question of the episode, we always end with that, if you watch the show you know, is simple. First of all, if you're watching this, and maybe it's even post-performance, and you saw me play this, and now you're watching these, does it change at all as an audience member, having some behind-the-scenes information? And if you're a player, and maybe you're playing this, or you want to play this, or you just play marimba, I'd love to know your thoughts on the sticking issues we talked about, or maybe what you do, because again, this is interactive. I want to learn from you guys. So that's today's episode. Look for episode 3, part 3 that is, on Thursday. Oops. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.